and you will pay the price.
Next on Currents News, New York's Chuck Schumer is apologizing for shouting out those words aimed at two Supreme Court justices. A new shakeup in the race for the White House. A one-time Democratic frontrunner has become an also-ran. An inspiring story of hope that's shining through the disaster after a tornado ripped up Tennessee. Plus, other secrets are coming out now that the Vatican's archives are open. We'll tell you what they are. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. Senator Schumer now says he's sorry. He warned two Supreme Court justices about consequences. The New Yorker went after them by name as the High Court heard the first big pro-life case of the Trump presidency. Currents News' Emily Druby reports on the uproar.
I shouldn't have used the words I did, but in no way was I making a threat. I never would do such a thing.
Senator Chuck Schumer apologizing after being slammed over warnings he issued against two Supreme Court justices by name.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
At the time Schumer spoke, the justices were listening to arguments about a Louisiana law that would limit abortion. Political science professor Brian Brown says the furor is far from normal.
It's something we normally don't see. The judiciary is traditionally an independent, co-equal branch of government, and this kind of rhetoric, whether it's Republican side or the Democratic side, it's inappropriate.
In a rare move, Chief Justice John Roberts condemned the remarks publicly, writing, "Justices know that criticism comes with the territory, but threatening statements of this sort from the highest levels of government are not only inappropriate, they are dangerous." Brown says the incident is part of an unfortunate trend.
You've seen a coarsening kind of our political rhetoric, and you've seen it on all sides.
Not long ago, President Trump criticized Justices Sotomayor and Ginsburg, and in 2010, President Obama, at his State of the Union, blasted a high court decision on campaign finance.
What we've seen over the years is this growing trend of people criticizing the judiciary or weighing in, inserting partisan politics into these legal matters, which really shouldn't happen.
The fight to preserve unborn life is passionate, and Brown says it's important for advocates and opponents alike to stay civil.
We can disagree without being disagreeable.
In Jamaica, Queens, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The High Court case that sparked the Schumer outburst involves a pro-life law in Louisiana. It's designed to limit the number of abortions performed in the state. Joining us now is the Director of Pro-Life Activities for the New York State Catholic Conference, Kathleen Gallagher. Kathy, help us better understand the workings of the Louisiana law. How does it reduce the number of abortions in the state?
What it does is it says doctors who perform abortions have to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital in case something goes wrong and the woman has to be transferred there, which seems like a normal thing that you would want your doctor to have. In fact, the abortion industry over the years has kind of exempted itself from these kinds of health and safety regulations. Like, if a doctor was performing an appendectomy or a tonsillectomy on you or I, they would have to have admitting privileges. The abortion industry somehow always gets a pass, you know? Like, even here in New York, it's a sacred cow. Like, informed consent is required for virtually every other surgical procedure, not abortion. Parental consent is required for all surgical procedures on children, not abortion.
Well, this Louisiana measure closely mirrors a law enacted in Texas that the court has already struck down as unconstitutional. Why did the justices take up the new case and not rely on the previous ruling?
That is the $600 million question. And really, the only ones who know the answer to that is Chief Justice Roberts and the other members of the court. I think it's a hopeful sign that they're going to take another look at this and say, is this an undue burden on women, as the court ruled the Texas law was, or is this simply a reasonable regulation and restriction on abortion?
Well, this is the first case of its kind in the Trump era with his two justices on the bench. Could the court be heading toward the end of Roe v. Wade?
I think the court will be getting to considering the precedent of Roe versus Wade eventually. I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the near future, but I do think it will happen.
All right. Are there other abortion cases on the Supreme Court's calendar that we should be alert to?
I don't believe they're on the Supreme Court calendar yet, but there are a good number of cases working their way up through the circuit courts from other states which have enacted bans on abortion in certain circumstances, after a certain number of weeks, perhaps after the baby can feel pain. So there are cases working their way up, and our goal, as always, as church, is maximum protection for women and their unborn children.
All right, Kathy Gallagher, Director of Pro-Life Activities for the New York State Catholic Conference. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It is now pretty much a two-man race for the White House. Senator Elizabeth Warren is dropping out, despite earlier assertions that she would stay in the race until the Democratic National Convention. Supporters of Senator Elizabeth Warren not cheering tonight. Warren announced today she is ending her presidential campaign.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over.
Warren made the announcement outside of her Cambridge, Massachusetts home this afternoon, her home state, where she came in third on Super Tuesday. Still, she says she's grateful to the people of Massachusetts.
They're the reason I'm in this fight, and they're the reason I am able to stand here today.
The Democrat who's represented her state for the past 8 years in the Senate says she has no regrets. She also has no endorsement announcement yet.
Not today. Not today. I need some space around this, and want to take a little time to think a little more. I've been spending a lot of time right now on the question of suspending and also making sure that this works as best we can for our staff, for our team, for our volunteers.
Warren also mentioned the little girls who will have to wait 4 more years for the possibility of a female president. Another former candidate, Senator Kamala Harris, talked about the challenges of women running for president.
The reality is that there is still a lot of work to be done to make it very clear that women are exceptionally qualified and capable of being the commander-in-chief of the United States of America.
Meanwhile, the current commander-in-chief had this to say in a tweet. Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, who was going nowhere except into Mini Mike's head, just dropped out of the Democrat primary 3 days too late. She cost Crazy Bernie at least Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Texas, probably cost him the nomination. Came in third in Mass. There are 3 candidates left who want the Democratic nomination: Joe Biden, Senator Bernie Sanders, and Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard. The next primary is on Tuesday in Michigan. With the presidential contest heating up, a top American Archbishop, San Francisco's Salvatore Cordileone, is telling Catholic voters the church doesn't choose sides.
There's no political platform that lines up because our values don't come from a political platform. It's not based on a political philosophy. It's based on a consistent ethic of human life.
Archbishop Cordileone echoes the message of the U.S. Bishops' Conference. Issues should guide Catholic voters when they go to the polls. At the top of the list, things that minimize human dignity or attack life. In recent elections, Catholics have been split pretty evenly between Republican and Democratic candidates. We have good news tonight. Prayers have been answered in Queens, and a young altar server is found safe. 13-year-old Gabriella Maldonado is back with her family after she went missing over the weekend. She's very involved in the parish life at Our Lady Queen of Martyrs in Forest Hills. Gabriella and her 11-year-old sister Sabrina are altar servers at the church. Now the 2 kids and mom Stephanie are reunited. An update now on the coronavirus. The first case is being confirmed next door in New Jersey, and there are 2 more patients in New York City. Governor Andrew Cuomo wants to ramp up testing of people with symptoms.
Right now, we can only test about 100 samples per day. We want to get that up to 1,000 samples per day.
Congress is rushing more than $8 billion in emergency money to the president's desk. Key to the package is help for elderly patients. In Rome, tourists are enjoying a rarity. The streets are nearly empty as the coronavirus is cutting down on crowds. Many of the travelers to the Eternal City are calling it an open-air museum.
I didn't know it was going to be so easy. The media makes it seem more chaotic than it is. It's very nice to come, visit, and be calm.
Still, the tourists are taking precautions against the virus while they discover the hidden corners of Rome. Here at home, there's good news tonight for the Archdiocese of Atlanta. The Pope is appointing a new Archbishop. He's Bishop Gregory Hartmayer of Savannah. The new Archbishop was born in Buffalo and is a Franciscan. Bishop Hartmayer served in New York and Massachusetts before moving south. He'll now lead more than 1 million Catholics in an archdiocese with over 100 parishes. There's a lot more news headed your way. The Pope's been there before, and now the place is back on the front lines of a crisis. The darkness of disaster is being pierced by the hope of human kindness. And what else can be found in those secret Vatican archives? We have some answers. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back.
Coming to help. Yeah.
Neighbor helping neighbor as hope shines through the storm that wrecked Tennessee. The recovery from the storm needs everyone to be involved, and that's happening right now in Tennessee. Good Samaritans pitching in to help people they don't even know. Camila Bernal is on the ground with the good people, and she also reports the latest about the storm.
The National Weather Service confirming an EF4 tornado hitting this county. That's 175 miles per hour winds. And I want to show you what those winds can do. Behind me, debris. That used to be a home, and now it is just piles and piles of debris. Thankfully, the family in that home is okay. Neighbors were able to help them out that night the tornado hit. Today, though, so many volunteers coming together to help that family and so many others in this neighborhood, showing us what this community can do together.
There have been a lot of people helping out them. A lot of strangers, people I've never met before.
Kindness of strangers shining through the darkest of times for the people who have lost everything.
Like, what do you do? You're just coming by to...
Coming to help. Yeah.
Do you know Alex?
No, just going where help is needed.
After a lethal and powerful tornado struck in the middle of the night, the deadliest day of tornadoes in 7 years.
We got our daughter out of bed and we went down to the basement, and we made it with like 30 seconds to spare, and it hit like a freight train.
Officials are now working to piece together an accurate picture of the deadly trail of devastation left behind.
We will have law enforcement and first responders there tonight on the scene, working around the clock. At
least 2 powerful tornadoes touched down Monday night into Tuesday morning. The one in the East Nashville area was an EF3, and it was a powerful EF4 tornado packing 175 mile per hour winds that leveled neighborhoods in Putnam County.
I don't think we would have, not all of us would have survived if we had been upstairs still.
And at the moment, just 1 person is still unaccounted for. Thankfully, the death toll has not gone up. 24 people dead out of those 24, 18 here in this county, 5 of them children. Reporting in Putnam County, Tennessee, I'm Camila Bernal. Back to you.
Thank you, Camila. Now turning to news around the world as tensions continue along the Greek-Turkish border, a Catholic humanitarian organization is stepping in. Caritas Europa says a humane and dignified response is needed for the current migrant situation. Turkey opened its borders to migrants after dozens of Turkish troops were killed in a Russia-backed Syrian government offensive in Idlib province. Now thousands are living in deteriorating conditions in migrant camps in Greece. Caritas is calling for the relocation of unaccompanied minors to other European countries. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Recep Erdogan went to Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the situation in Idlib. They're expected to agree on a reduction in the current escalation and a possible ceasefire deal. According to the UN, since December, about 1 million people have fled the fighting in Idlib. Pope Francis has seen the refugee crisis firsthand. He's traveled to the Greek island of Lesbos, calling conditions there shameful, and returning to Rome with several Syrian refugees in tow. Now, with Turkey opening its borders with Greece, Lesbos is again on the front lines, facing a new flood of refugees. Phil Black reports from there.
These people are cold, exhausted, and deeply relieved. They're all Afghan, mostly families and children traveling alone, who recently crossed that stretch of water from Turkey in a small boat during the night.
It's scary, very scary. People are shouting, water is up and down.
That danger is behind them, but their suffering doesn't end on this shoreline. This is where most migrants on Lesbos must stay, the now sprawling Moria camp. Designed for a touch over 2,000 people, the current population is 18,000. Most live among olive trees in handmade shelters without running water, sanitation, electricity. It's a slum.
It's your child? Baby?
It is no place for a newborn. No place for 3-week-old Adrian to start his life. Moria no good, they chant. The migrants want out of the camp and off the island to catch a ferry to mainland Greece. The police won't let them. They're especially fired up. There's a rumor a few migrants were allowed to board a ferry to Athens the day before. When clubs fail to calm them, the police try words.
This is fake, my friend, fake. Nobody left. My friend.
After 5 years and hundreds of thousands of migrants arriving on Lesbos and nearby islands, Greek frustration is turning violent as well. This UN facility was torched on Sunday night. Aid workers say they're now frequently targeted by angry locals because they're helping the migrants.
There have been intimidating acts, violent acts against humanitarian workers, against refugees that are arriving on the shores, but also against journalists.
There is tension everywhere on Lesbos, among Greeks who feel abandoned and trapped in an endless crisis they didn't create, and with the many migrants living in squalor, hopelessly watching ferries come and go every day. All want the same thing: a chance at a better future. Phil Black on the Greek island of Lesbos.
Pope Francis is talking to the youth of the world, sending a message ahead of the annual World Youth Day gathering celebrated in dioceses on Palm Sunday. The theme is from Luke's Gospel, "Young man, I say to you, arise." Francis reminded young people the scripture passage teaches us that there is hope in Jesus, especially for those who feel downtrodden. The next international celebration of World Youth Day will be in 2022 in Portugal. Meantime, the Pope is giving hope to Chinese Catholics. His March prayer intentions are dedicated to them on the heels of a Vatican-Beijing deal to improve relations. The Holy Father is encouraging Catholics to be faithful and good citizens.
La Iglesia quiere que los cristianos chinos sean cristianos en serio y que sean buenos ciudadanos. Deben promover el Evangelio, pero sin hacer proselitismo, y alcanzar la unidad de la comunidad católica que está dividida.
Catholics in China are torn between communist authorized churches and those loyal to the Pope. The agreement to smooth relations between China and Rome should be renewed next September. Right now, more than 150 scholars are searching through secret Vatican archives opened earlier this week by Pope Francis. Many are looking for answers, trying to discover just how much Pope Pius XII helped the Jewish people during Nazi Germany. But what other secrets will they find? Here to tell us about that is the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White. Christopher, welcome. And for starters, why is Pius XII and World War II getting all the attention?
Well, for so many years, there's been this question of what did Pius know about the plight of the Nazis and the plight of the Jewish people in the face of the Nazis? Right. Did he help in the resistance? Was he doing all that he could? There are efforts to make him a saint, but people don't want to go down that route if we're going to find out things that perhaps cast him in a negative light. So everyone just wants clarity on this. But there's so much more, and historians are saying, there's going to take, be years worth of information to peel back, and it's not just going to be all about Pius.
Right. Some of the documents will provide insight about various theological debates and questions ahead of the Second Vatican Council. How so? Yeah, so, all sorts of nuggets are buried in these archives. Even today we hear questions about, so-and-so said they saw an apparition of Mary in this state or this country, and they write the Vatican to look into this. Well, this was going on at the time too, and so from those 20 years, we're going to see who was writing what about that. Questions about things like abortion or artificial insemination or even sex change are in these documents. As we see technology changing and new issues sort of bubbling up for the first time, priests writing to the Vatican wanting guidance on how to navigate these moral questions, and those answers are going to be there. All right, now there's some curious documents involving art and literature, right? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, this is one of the more amusing anecdotes that I found to date is, there are these documents in there when this new Italian edition, sponsored by the Italian government, of Dante's Divine Comedy came out. And the Italian government wrote to express their extreme disappointment that they would choose a Spaniard, Salvador Dali, to do the illustrations rather than an Italian. And so it's both sort of serious questions of doctrine and dogma, but also sort of just very practical concerns about art and frustrations that are all chronicled there. So I'm excited to find out what's in there, and I think a lot of historians are as well.
How long is this going to take, though?
Oh my gosh, we're gonna be sort of sifting through this for the next few years at least, if not, centuries.
All right, well, we'll have a lot to talk about then.
Absolutely.
All right, Christopher White, the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Still to come on Currents News, a dramatic example of heroes putting their lives on the line to save another. And man's best friend linking up with man. It's something that's helping both dogs and vets. We want to tell you about an amazing story of heroism and care for human life that played out on an interstate in New Jersey. This routine traffic stop turning into something that seemed to be out of an action movie after an 18-wheeler runs off the side of the road and slams into a guardrail in Bridgewater Township. That's when two New Jersey state troopers immediately went to rescue the driver before his cab exploded.
I heard the truck hit the guardrail, and at that point I looked up and I saw the truck crash, and I knew that was definitely, somebody could be hurt over there. I'm really glad that I was in the right place at the right time. At that point in time, hopefully, that made a difference there, but other than that, I'm just really happy that everything panned out the way that it did.
Both officers were glad to be there to save a life. The driver, Ron Hickman, suffered only minor injuries. He's currently at his home in Ohio, resting. Ron hopes to visit his saviors soon so he can thank them in person. And finally tonight, soldiers who fought to keep America safe are happy to know they can find support from man's best friend. Canines for Warriors is a national program that helps vets dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. They're matched up with rescue shelter dogs. That means the program helps two groups in need, the vets and the dogs. PTSD afflicts about 700,000 veterans, and that's the same number of dogs euthanized each year. Missouri Army vet David Smith says he feels lucky to have his dog Lucky.
It was meant to be. She gives me comfort, to love. Having the opportunity to get out in the public more. She takes my mind off things. She keeps me occupied.
The vets undergo 3 weeks of training to get ready for their new friends. That is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.